Well, welcome everyone to the NeuroEM Therapeutics private investor meeting today. We're glad that you could all make it. Just want to let everyone know that this meeting will be recorded. So if you miss any of it or want to go back and watch any of it, we'll make sure that the recording gets shared with everyone after the presentation. We're going to have it's going to be about a 10-minute or so presentation today, and then we're going to have Q&A following the presentation. If you have any questions before, during, or after the presentation, please feel free to write them in the chat. You can private message them to me in the chat, or you can wait until the presentation is done and you can raise your hand and ask and unmute that way. So you have a few options to ask your questions. And from that, we can go ahead and get started. So NeuroEM Therapeutics is a leading clinical stage biotechnology research company focused on developing commercial applications and devices that leverage its proprietary and multi-patented transcranial electromagnetic treatment, leveraging radio frequencies technology to improve brain health and protect against cognitive decline caused by aging or neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. So to tell you more about it, I want to introduce CEO Chuck Papagiorgio.
Thank you, Sky. Hello, everybody. I also want to make sure that for your questions, I have a Chief Product Officer and Chief Marketing Officer Amanda Patnow with me, a Chief Science Officer Dr. Goodwin, and a Chief of Staff and Operations Manager Sam Modler. So we are here to talk about NeuroEM Therapeutics, and I think it's worth noting how I got involved with this company and how I pulled our team together. I sold my last company. I'm a serial entrepreneur, mainly in the tech space. I sold an AI company to DNB 3 years ago, and I was looking for my next thing to do. And a VC investor friend of mine called me up and said, "Hey, Chuck, can you go look at this company? They have a non-drug-based treatment for Alzheimer's." And the PG version of my response was, "Baloney, nobody does." Well, here I am almost 3 years later to admit that I was wrong. And we now are here to talk about this company that has 9 patents, designation by the FDA for breakthrough device, admitted to the Alzheimer's moonshot at Startup Health, one of 30 companies out of over 600 from all over the world that applied, $7 million invested, and a heck of a lot more accolades that I can talk about in this brief introduction. But even with all that, that's not why I started this. The reason I started this was her. Her's my friend Marty. Marty was 83 years old when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, one out of 500 plus thousand people in the United States alone that get diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And when she was diagnosed, her daughter decided that the side effects available at the time for the therapies, and quite frankly, even today, they were not as attractive as potential answers to the problem. She could have chosen to have a high invasive solution, drilling holes in your head or taking drugs with side effects like, brain hemorrhage and death, or a low invasive solution like stimulation and light and sound therapy. And she decided to do nothing. So for 2 years, there was no treatment. And then she discovered that little green dot on the top right of your screen, this solution that we have, this technology that is very low invasiveness, basically zero invasiveness, and based on our clinical trials has some very, very impressive results. And this is what happened. If Marty stayed on no treatment, the expected cognitive decline would have been basically what you see right now, that red line. In the 4 years, maybe 5, completely gone in the hole of completely unaware of the environment, of memory, unable to interact with people without constant care. The drugs available at the time and the antibodies would have slowed the disease and the progression by about 30%, 25% at the time. Today, even the best drug, the antibody therapies, will slow the progression down by 35, again, with all kinds of associated side effects. But what happened when Marty started that treatment is this black line up on top. What happened was not only did we slow the decline, the cognitive decline, we stopped it, reversed it, and for 4 years now, Marty happens to be a benchmark patient that we've been tracking on a consistent basis. For 4 years now, we've maintained it. As a matter of fact, last month or month before last, Marty celebrated her 91st birthday. Of note, the same day that she had a great grandchild born. And we asked her as part of our process, probably for the last time, to take another cognitive test. And Marty scored in the normal range for a 91-year-old. So not only does a therapy stop the decline, it reverses significant parts of the impact and maintains it. Now, if I only had one person to talk about, you'd probably say, hey, go away, right? One person doesn't make a trend. But we have similar results from a open study that we did, clinical trial done by independent CRO with 8 patients. And we have 5 patients that we're tracking internally over the last couple of years alongside with Marty, and we have the same pattern. Basically, we stop the decline. And it's fascinating because if you try to find a solution for Alzheimer's, I mean, you'll find all kinds of things, $25,000 devices that come from unknown places with unknown technology, all the way down to you can buy crystal-based devices on Amazon, right? Well, we're not any of those. The way we do it is through a random discovery that short bursts of radio frequency energy directed at the brain happen to break down the accumulations of toxicity, either caused by tau, A beta, the oligomers, all the things that build up inside the brain that basically kill the neuron, reduce the ability to process, and reduce cognitive abilities. And not only that, we also found out that our technology does 2 other things. It also increases ATP production in the brain, and ATP is basically the fuel that powers the brain, and rebalances cytokines, which is a fancy science word for reducing inflammation. So we have a device that not only has a medical application targeting the Alzheimer's treatment space, it also has a significant wellness application, reducing inflammation, increasing ATP production, creates a very significant market opportunity. And it's important that we note both because it doesn't matter how you slice the market, whether you look at it as the therapeutics device for Alzheimer's, which is a $5 billion market and it's going to grow exponentially over the next few years, or even if you look at it as a digital brain health, people today are spending $200+ billion a year, and that's only going to continue to grow just on brain health devices. Because let's face it, aging and cognitive decline are closely associated. I mean, what's the point of living to be 90 years old in a healthy body when your brain is not functioning? And even supplements that improve brain health, like nootropics, is a multi-billion-dollar market. So we know have a significant market opportunity for growth. And we assess that and we build an economic plan for our solution to actually approach the market in both ways. We are approaching it first with a wellness device that allows us to generate significant amount of revenue over the next few years that will continue funding the clinical research that we need to do to deliver a clinical device to market. We built it in a very basic fundamental approach. We know, based on marketing research that we've conducted and what's out there, that we can sell 5,000 devices year 1, 10,000 devices year 2, 20,000 devices year 3, and by that time we'll start building a medical device and start selling for that. Just those, give or take, 40,000 device sales over 3 years generate more than $100 million in gross margin. That is a significant amount of money that can be used to further the company, fund the growth, fund the clinical trials, and continue pursuing the science side of what we do. And that's important because I'm not just saying that unencumbered by facts or actual analysis. We do have a team that's I'm pretty proud of. And I'll highlight the fact that we're all nerds. Every single one of us has a science background. Our internal team, our management team, our operations team, our medical advisors. But even more importantly than that, every single one of us is an entrepreneur. Every single one of us has built and launched at least one company. So we bring together a solid understanding of product development, product deployment, the market, capital raising, how to build efficient company, and credential wise, I joke with my team that it's not often that I walk into a room and I feel I'm the dumbest guy in the room until I walk into our advisory board meeting. I think combined there's like 9 PhDs, 4 MDs, 2 brain surgeons. It's an impressive team, and they're all smarter than me, and that's the way it should be for a CEO. And then we're pushing this aggressively. When we started this process, when our team came together to transition NeuroEM to a commercial company, we have a short-term view that needs to get us to market in the next 18 months. So we're taking all the engineering, all the design, everything we've done so far, and now packaging it into what's called a DFM, designed for manufacturing form that we can actually take to market. In parallel to that, we will continue the research that we have to continue the clinical trials to get a full designation from the FDA as a treatment device for Alzheimer's. We're doing a capital raise. We're doing it in 2 steps. The first raise is a $5 million Series A. I'm thrilled to report that last Thursday we closed the first $850,000 with a lead VC, Blue Lake Ventures, and now we are scheduling 2 more closing dates to add to that. We've got a lot of interest from a lot of different people over the next 30 days. And then we plan to maybe, and I'll explain the maybe in a minute, to do a second round of capital raising right before we go to market, because once we have pre-orders, we want to make sure that we have the inventory and everything else to fulfill them. The reason I say may do it, it's because once we have these orders and we have product revenue forecasted, we might choose to do order financing rather than get a dilutive round into the company. Now, all these things just to say that we have a really meaningful company that's got a significant upside opportunity. But even with that, that's not the reason we're doing it. When Marty's daughter said that, we all stood up and said, "Ooh, that's it. That's the reason we're doing it. That is the reason we're doing it. We want to bring this solution to market. That's why we're speeding up the wellness device. That's why we're trying everything we can to get a solution to market, because this disease is not just a disease of health. It's also a disease of dignity. It robs you of your dignity, and we need to kick its ass and bring some more solutions to the market that are not drug dependent." And with that, I believe I given you enough information to, if nothing else, generate questions in your mind. So I'm going to turn it back over to Avery and Sky to drive the process of answering some of your questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chuck. So we do have some questions. So the first one is, can this technology also be used as a substitute for transcranial magnetic stimulation to treat depression or other indications?
So the answer is we have enough opinions from a scientific team that it could be. We don't have enough data to back it up. And it also happens that we often get confused with TMS. We're not TMS. We actually have a direct impact on the brain. But the answer is yes. There's a significant amount of research that points that direction. And part of our studies we're going to be doing over the next couple of years is to confirm the actual efficacy in that space.
Okay, wonderful. And this is a 2-part question. The first question is, where is the wellness device sold?
So right now, Amanda, you want to take that?
Sure, I'll be happy to. At this time, our product is not available for sale. We are wrapping up some final testing, and we are currently why we're here today, raising to get this device to the stage of being designed for manufacture and ready for mass production. The only devices that can be purchased at this time, there are some licenses that are being purchased. So some revenue is just starting to come in through a brand new partnership that we are very excited to be actively rolling out right now. They are all for experimental use only, though, and are under the very close guidance of a research team and under the care of the appropriate IRB and such. But we do anticipate, just like Chuck showed in his timeline there, our launch for commercial availability being in about 18 months.
Okay, great. And I guess following that one was the part 2 of the question, but what is your revenue to date?
So right now our revenue was mostly from grants for research. So right now we're a pre-revenue company. We will start generating revenue in the next 30 to 60 days from the licensing of the experimental device that are part of the guided studies funded by patients. And then real revenue will start once we start selling the wellness device direct to consumer.
Okay, great. Next question says, where are the devices being manufactured? Where are components sourced from? And what is the impact of tariffs?
So right now, I'm going to go backwards. We don't have any impact on tariffs because all the components that we use in the manufacturing of our devices are sourced by existing distributors that have inventory. That's one of the things that we do when we do our manufacturing abilities right now. The planning and the manufacturing is being done out of the West Coast by our engineering manufacturing company. And then once we start scaling, it will be also managed by a contract manufacturer in the US. So once we get to scale and we're starting to sell tens of thousands of devices, sometime 3 to 4 years from now, at that point, we'll assess a manufacturing sourcing strategy, but we're not there yet and we're not being impacted by any of that.
Okay, got it. Do you have supply chain negotiated and tied up? What's the go-to market strategy you think will be most effective?
I'm going to answer the first part. The answer is yes. Everything we do comes from distro facilities and providers in the US, and everything we buy it in advance based on the number of devices we expect to make. But then I'll let Amanda take the second part.
The other part was the go-to-market strategy?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. What it says, what do you think the go-to-market strategy will be most effective?
So our go-to-market strategy really involves 2 primary tracks. The first of which we've sort of touched on very briefly, is the direct-to-consumer version. So a wellness device, like Chuck mentioned, that will not be approved by the FDA for any medical application. We won't be able for that device to talk about Alzheimer's or treating any particular conditions. Instead, it will be a general brain health device, so anyone can buy it without a prescription. And we'll really be targeting a few different groups there, including those who are interested in longevity. We talk a lot about the aging process and what that means. And I think we're seeing right now a huge influx of people who are spending in this area and really looking for meaningful solutions. And so we can help there with staving off what we've come to consider the natural aging process of the brain. This is also very useful and important to folks like military who are looking for faster decision time and reduced cognitive fatigue. We're also looking at gamers, athletes, entrepreneurs, those who are interested in really keeping their mental abilities sharp. So like we mentioned, starts in about 18 months. And from there, while we are generating the revenue that you see on the screen from that commercial device, we will in parallel be working towards the full FDA approval of the medical device for the treatment of Alzheimer's. That is something that as you see here, and I think Chuck mentioned before, the FDA has already granted us the first ever breakthrough device status for treating Alzheimer's and cognitive decline associated with Alzheimer's. And so that is meant to help us to fast track that approval process. So those two will be happening at the same time so that we can get that medical device launched in probably approximately 3 years.
Okay, wonderful.
I could
Oh
talk
yeah,
on that for all day. So hopefully that was a good summary to answer the question there.
it sounded great. And if anyone has a follow-up question to that, feel free to ask it in the chat as well. Where are you at with FDA?
So there's 3 different tracks that have been happening with the FDA. The first track was the initial assessment and guidance they gave us on the requirements for clinical trials. That's actually under consideration right now. The second track was what we call a 513G approval process, which is the approval that we're going to get for the marketing, the messaging, for the wellness device. We started that process. We were a week from having the final conversation with the FDA to get the letter from them, but with the activities going on in DC right now, slowed down a little bit. So we are unfortunately have to chase them down, but we expect to get the approval for the wellness device in the next few weeks. And then the next part is what we're doing right now. Dr. Goodwin and the team are working on the clinical trial framework and all the things that we need to do so we can go back to the FDA with an updated plan on how we need to do clinical trials and give them the data that they need. And keeping in mind that the FDA is in a flux right now, so we have to adjust to whatever they come back with.
Okay, great. What will the device sell for?
So we've done quite a bit of market testing. The wholesale price of the device will be about $3,500, and then the retail will be $5,000. And we tested the price. As Amanda mentioned, we actually just signed an agreement with a medical services company that have about 1 million patients, a little bit over 1 million patients under management, and they went out polling them about if they were interested in paying for participating in a study and how much would they pay. And they came up with pretty much the same numbers. They'll pay $5,000 for licensing the device, and then we'll charge them $3,500. And before you ask the next question, my cost of manufacturing with a 40% contingency right now at low volume is $750, but we expect it to drop to $500 once we start making hundreds of devices, and it will probably drop to sub $400 when we start making orders at 1,000 at a time.
Okay, great. Are there any identified side effects of your technology?
That's a great question. The answer is we haven't found any yet. And I say that in all seriousness. There is a significant amount of research because the frequencies and the power that our device operates in is pretty much the same as most cell phones operate. So there's 50 to 70 years worth of research that has not identified any side effects of that. And then even the US military did a long-term study about the impact of radio frequencies, long-term impact, negative impact. They couldn't find any, and they don't use cell phone power. I mean, they use a lot more powerful equipment than we do. So we haven't identified any. As a matter of fact, the Institutional Review Board gave us what they call an NSR, a non-significant risk designation, which is the reason we're able to do a lot of the studies that we're doing without a lot of significant oversight. And using the device is pretty easy. You put it on, turn it on, wait for an hour, take it off, put it back in the charger, do the same thing at night. You can go about your business, doing your regular life, have your coffee, read a book, whatever you can do. Obviously, don't get in the shower or walk out in the rain, but that's about all the restrictions that we have with the device itself.
Okay, great. This question says, some other efforts to treat neurological disorders, for example, Motif, Intercosmos, need to implant devices into the skull to deliver strong enough and targeted enough radiation. How is it that your product works from the outside of the skull?
Yeah, there's a difference between direct. Oh, hey, Ed, you want to talk about that? What am I doing?
Sure.
I got you here.
Jump in a science question. First, we are using electromagnetic fields that are radio waves, so it's akin to light, just in a different part of the spectrum. It's a very unique form of electromagnetic radiation. I think the modalities you're talking about are either direct electric field or magnetic field. And so they have a very different interaction with matter than how we work. It is true that RF is absorbed as it goes into the brain, which is how it works, because it imparts energy to the molecules in there and basically gently twists them as it goes by. And these complexes that we're focused on are broken down because they're more fragile. The see, what was I'm sorry, I had the question, it scrolled off
No
my
problem. It
screen.
was
There's so many
how
questions.
is it that your product works from the
Oh,
outside of the skull?
yeah. So it is able to penetrate the skull and get in with sufficient power to disrupt these complexes, as measured by blood markers that show the um, breakdown of A, beta, and tau. So as to exactly how it does it, all I can say is it does, and it worked fine in mice as well. So we don't know, honestly, if we are at the right power to get into very deep brain structures or not. We know that it did work very well for Alzheimer's disease, but in terms of other neurodegeneration that's much deeper, like Parkinson's, we don't know yet. And actually, part of this large study we're doing with our business partner will include Parkinson's patients, so we'll find out. But I just want to make the big point, this is a very different modality than anybody else, and partly that's because we have very strong patent protection in the RF space.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ed. And we are going to continue with Q&A. I'm just going to put up a quick poll for the investors on today to gauge your interest in NeuroEM. But while that's up for a little bit, we're going to continue with the Q&A. So the next question is, who owns the IPR, the company or the individuals?
Now, the company, all the intellectual property is owned by NeuroEM. The first 2 patents were generated in collaboration with the research team when they were at the University of South Florida, but we have an existing agreement, perpetual license, royalty base for the first 2 patents. The next 7 patents were issued and assigned directly to the company. So are the 11 PCTs, the international versions of what we're doing. And then the 2 patents that were under review right now, one of them actually should be getting issued in the next 30 days, are also owned by the company. So all the IP is owned and assigned to the company.
Okay. Next question says, I'd like to understand the value proposition and key benefits of the wellness device. Specifically, what claims are being made about its effectiveness? Additionally, how will you differentiate the wellness device from the medical device in terms of functionality and purpose? And I'll stop there, and then there's another question. So let's start with that.
Amanda, you want to take that?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll start with the first part of that question, which was the claims. So the claims on the wellness device, assuming that we get the blessing from the FDA, which has already been submitted via our 513G, and we should be hearing back literally any day on that. But the wellness device claims really center around a few key areas. First, supporting overall mental acuity. So things like supported sustained attention and focus, supporting cognitive processing and reaction speed, promoting mental clarity and reducing brain fog, supporting productivity and daily performance. We also have benefits and claims within the realm of supporting relaxation and emotional wellness. So around stress management, mood, emotional well-being, and reducing cellular stress. There are a number of more granular claims under those, but that's sort of the big umbrella there for the wellness device, because it is crucial that we stay within bounds with the FDA and the definitions of, what constitutes a wellness device. How is that going to be differentiated from the medical device? Well, a few very big and important things. First of all, they will be branded completely separately under 2 wholly owned subsidiaries that will license the technology from NeuroEM. So all branding, all interaction, everything will be very different. And on the clinical side, obviously, we'll be able to make medical claims. We'll be able to talk about Alzheimer's and treating actual symptoms and conditions there under, again, proper FDA approval and guidance. And, as we continue rounding out these clinical trials, we also anticipate that, the power levels may be different on the clinical device. The number of antenna may be a little different. So the medical device likely will be a slightly souped up version so that it is targeted specifically to the conditions that it's meant to treat.
Yeah, and I think that's a key characteristic of the medical device is the programmability to increase its power while still staying within the FCC guidelines for safety. I think that answered the question, right, Sky? Any other? What was the second part of the question?
Yeah. Second part of the question was, what is the go-to-market strategy for both provide patient journey pathway for the wellness device and the medical device?
I think we kind of answered that, but the practical approach for the wellness device is a recommended usage twice a day by the patient, by the consumer that's buying the device. And then the protocol for the medical device, as of right now, it's the same thing. It's twice a day for an hour, but that would be modified as we gather more data and we figure out if there's a higher efficacy position or power with the more powerful clinical device.
Okay, sounds great. And if there's any follow-up questions on that, feel free to ask as well. The next question is, so insurance does not cover these products? Question mark. So that's a question. And what will the per unit price be if it's out of pocket?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The wellness device is definitely not covered by insurance. That's why it's targeted direct to consumer, and it's the price is $3,500 out of pocket for anybody that wants to buy it. If they were to buy it at a wholesale price, or if they're a part of the study, it's $5,000. But the medical device, that would be a prescribed device. It has to be because it's under an FDA approval with its own code, and that would be insurance reimbursable. And we have part of an advisory team, probably one of the countries, if not the leading expert, definitely one of the leading experts in reimbursement. And that actually believe the pricing for that would be about $18,000 instead of the $5,000 for the consumer, the wellness version of the device. And that would be insurance reimbursable. But the wellness device is definitely not. It's not a... Now, even though there's some exceptions with CMS, and we explored them, I can't definitively say that there would be any reimbursement for that.
Okay, and going along with that, the next question was, where does funding through CMS fit or not fit into what you want to do?
Yeah, so we haven't approached CMS for any funding. As a matter of fact, because of all the changes going on in DC right now, we removed any assumptions of any funding, whether it's the NIH grants, whether it's FDA, whether it's CMS. We are focused exclusively on what we can do to build a commercial wellness device, and that's what the money we're raising for. And then we'll leverage that revenue to actually fund all the other activities. There is a CMS program that we were a candidate for because of a breakthrough designation that would allow us to get nationwide approval early, but right now it's in limbo.
Okay. And what does your AI strategy look like in terms of the device and data?
AI strategy?
Yes.
That's an interesting question. That we are gathering so much data that we haven't quite figured out yet what the most efficient use of that data will be, but we are gathering a significant amount of data, and the initial applications of the AI is to identify efficiency and effectiveness, power levels, things that we can easily deploy. Then as part of our associated product strategy, we have an app that's going to control the device, but also is going to have an AI component as far as doing testing and diagnosing level of cognitive performance to associate that with our device. But other than that, it's AI in this case, it's got very limited application to the device itself. It's mostly about how we plan to use it internally and how we present the data to our patients and users.
Okay. When will you have definitive clinical trials with bigger numbers of participants?
Well, there's just to start from defining, there's the clinical study, and that is a clinical study. The only difference is that it doesn't have a control group. That's starting in the next 30 to 60 days. Our goal is to have 100 patients with a maximum of 1,000 that are actually using the device as part of the study. We'll be collecting data. In addition to that, we have a proposal right now with a large medical institution out of the West Coast to do a clinical trial, which will have a control group or a sham control group. That, Ed, we're submitting that, I believe, at the end of this month, and we'll know in the next 90 days. Is that a reasonable expectation?
Yes.
So that's where we are. And that study will be, I think we're targeting 45 people for the 3 different groups.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. Wonderful. And so I know we had touched on this a little bit earlier. It was asked again, so I'll just ask the question. It was what are some potential side effects of this treatment in Alzheimer's patients? So I know you said right now there's none. Do you foresee maybe any in the future, or none that you can think of on the horizon?
We can't think of any right now. We've explored all kinds of possibilities. There's none anticipated, at least not that we thought about, or the researchers before us did, or the US military did when they research impact of radio frequencies. We can't find any.
Okay.
I would point out 2 positive things that I think Chuck just touched on briefly that might have slipped by on all this. 2 other effects of this, which may be related to getting rid of the amyloid burden of the brain, is reduced brain inflammation or neuroinflammation in general. And we have some very early data that is occurring at the level of RNA transcription changing. And secondly, that the brain starts producing more ATP, their mitochondria become more efficient because mitochondria in Alzheimer's patients are severely impacted by A beta. And that may be the reason we get this rebound in cognition and not just slowing down the disease. So those are side effects, but they're happy ones. So,
Yeah, Ed keeps reminding me when I hear the word side effects, they immediately go to the negative, but
yeah.
side effects are also could be positive, and we do have positive side effects. And it's interesting, somewhere in the chat I saw somebody said, well, why don't use of cell phones reduce the incidence of Alzheimer's? Well, okay, we're in the same frequency range and power, but the delivery mechanism we have is different. Cell phones use a continuous transmission. Ours is pulsed. So basically think of it as instead of turning on a signal and letting it run continuously, we keep hitting those structures and pinging them on a continuous basis, which slowly breaks them down as opposed to a continuous transmission signal. Now, what's interesting, there's been enough studies now using FNIR's technology that if you use a cell phone, wherever the antenna is close to your head, for almost 20 to 30 minutes after that, there's increased blood flow and circulation and activity. So even that has some effect, but it's not a targeted delivery. That's one of the biggest difference that we have. And I know there's and Sky, I know you're trying to manage this, but I'm looking at the questions. There's
No,
a
please do.
question about the infrared and the entrainment. So the answer is we track about 100 different approaches to this. Go ahead.
285 currently.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Almost 300. I have to keep updating my numbers. We track almost 300 different providers of medicine, devices, anything that deals with brain health in general. And there's a difference between those that are trying to stimulate the brain to heal itself, whether they try to do it with entrainment, sound, light, and those that actually have high invasive electromagnetic stimulation by sticking electrodes and pushing electricity. And us, we are actually complementary with not the ones that invasive, not the ones that stick probes in your brain, because we don't know how it would impact the transmission of signals. But we're very complementary to all those other solutions. So there is Synaptica, there's Cognito, there's a few other devices that introduce entrainment and try to get the brain to heal itself. we don't see us as directly competing with them. We, if anything, we're a complementary solution to that, what they have.
Okay, great. The next question was, how often does the patient have to use your device? Every day, once a week, etc.?
Yeah, so the original protocol was an hour in the morning and an hour at night for about 6 months, and then eventually changed. Now, what's interesting is we don't know if that's the most efficient way to do it. We actually had a research study trying to do that, but it was using brain cells rather than actual people. And we couldn't get to that level of granularity to decide exactly the optimal range. But based on what we know right now with some of our patients, we're gonna keep it like that, twice a day for an hour. And then once the effects are remediated, maybe reduce it to maybe once a day for an hour. There's also use for prophylactic purposes. So if you have MCI, for example, you might want to use it once a day early on to prevent the increase and the onset of that.
Okay. Is the device to be used for CTE?
Ed? I don't know what
It could be, yeah, that's chronic traumatic encephalitis, whatever. Yeah, from repeated head injuries. So yes, we have considered that. There's a lot of different indications we could go after. We're very focused on Alzheimer's because it's the single largest disease right now, and people are desperate for a solution, obviously. But CTE also does involve A beta at deposition in its different stages, and we are exploring military applications as well, from the kind of traumatic shocks that occur, and even just from blast damage over time. But certainly for any kind of brain injury, that this may be important, as well as with the, as I mentioned before, the reduction in neuroinflammation, which also plays a role in those diseases. So it is of great interest. There is some activity in the Tampa space that we may be able to tap into. We have just been throttled back because we are such a small team and only can do so much, and that our focus is on Alzheimer's at the moment. But ideally, once we get some of these trials going, we would love to basically piggyback on some other of these other trials that people are very concerned about, and just simply add the device. And there are many other indications I could mention that also would be quite possible to do this. But Alzheimer's is $10 billion, market. So let's get something in that first. But yeah, CTE could well be an aside, and frankly, the wellness device may treat that as well.
Yep. And as far as other potential therapeutic approaches, I mean, there's enough indications. We have one of our initial advisors, scientific advisors, believes we can help in mood disorders and depression. So there's a lot of things, but like I said at the beginning of the presentation, we're all nerds, we're all engineers, scientists. We try we go out of our way not to make promises that we don't have at least a solid scientific basis and some data to talk about. So yeah, we're exploring all those things, but we couldn't make any definitive statements right now, even speculative. So.
Okay. This person says, having invested in medical device companies that looked brilliant in phase 2, small patent number, and that failed in phase 3, what makes you confident that this device will prove effective in a large patient population?
Well, what's interesting is, and I'll talk about the ones that I know, and then maybe Ed, you can provide a perspective. I mean, some of those, the drugs are the ones that generally fail significantly when you get to phase 3 because of the negative effect they have. I mean, there's one thing to test things on a few people, but for our device to fail, statistically improbable, considering the results that we have, even with the 11 people that I would have positive results for. Ed, I don't know if you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, it's a fair question because it is a
is
small trial, and but The issue is with the placebo group, if you are certain you're dealing with Alzheimer's patients, which that 8-person trial, they took big pains to make sure that an Alzheimer's diagnosis was confirmed. People don't get better at all. And these other folks that have been treated on the sort of micro trials on the sides, they as well had confirmed diagnoses. And so I take that as very impactful, but it is a small study. And, I would bet if you looked at 1,000 people in a trial, you could find a few that temporarily improved. But seeing the kind of improvement over 4.5 years that we've seen with one of the patients, and even in the extension study from the initial 8 people that showed a durable benefit, I think there's really something to go after. But I'm an angel investor too, so I deal with this all the time, and it's a risk reward. And sure, it's a risk, but the reward is like $20 billion a year. So, it's, and there's plenty, I don't think it's any more risky than some other, in a sense, it's less risky because we're talking about physics here. It's not biology almost. People that design a drug, it has to fit just right, go in just the right place, get inside cells, get through the blood-brain barrier, all that. We don't care about any of that because we are hitting a generalized structure. That's the amyloid structure. And it seems to work on every amyloid structure that's been tested, which honestly is 3 different ones out of the 30, but there's 3 of them that cause, all these major diseases. So it's come down to physics. It's not, don't require transport processes or biological function. You can do this in a test tube. It's pretty remarkable in that sense. So I think that it has been significantly de-risked, but it is, that's why the valuation is, pre-money valuation is 13 million. Because I'll tell you, companies, the drug companies, and this is historical fact, anyone can look this up, people that had a phase 1 study just, in a mouse model that looked okay, and mice are famous for being able to be cured of Alzheimer's that never translates into humans because their blood-brain barrier is like Swiss cheese. But they would have a phase 1 study in people and prove it didn't kill you, but no real sign of efficacy, and they would go public at multi-billion-dollar valuations. There are, I don't know, 8 or 10 companies that are like that, and they're all dead now. So just saying.
And we have spent enough time, and it's interesting. Somebody pointed something about the mathematical consistency. Happy to have you spend time with Ed and our mathematicians and the statisticians that looked at it and give you a very detailed analysis on what the differences are. There's interesting. There's a question about the best diagnostic tool for early amyloid buildup. Actually, there's a debate right now what is the best diagnostic approach for Alzheimer's. And we're actually, as part of the Alzheimer's Moonshot program, we have gotten to know quite a few companies that have not only blood tests and biomarkers, they have developed some very innovative technologies to identify the cognitive decline. I don't know that there's the best one, but there's a lot of good solutions out there that we are actually assessing, making part of our trial data and our study guides so we can gather more data from that. Yes, I am using the device. So I'm 60.
Okay.
I'm worried about that. Every time I forget my keys, I would think, oh, that's it. I'm getting Alzheimer's. Yes, I am using the device.
Okay, the next question was, how do you see NeuroEM positioning itself against other players in the digital brain health and neurotherapeutics market, especially those integrating AI and wearable technologies?
It's a very large market with a lot of players, and we are a very distinctive difference is that we're not a passive device. We are actually a targeted device, and we're not just trying to introduce, we're not trying to only get somebody to sleep better or only get somebody to have a faster reaction time. We position as a treatment device rather than the clinical version of our device. So we'll be complementary. We see some of those devices out there that, if somebody thinks that a $150 device is going to slow down age-related cognitive decline, I don't think we can compete with that.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll add to that. I think that, like Chuck said, this is actually a direct treatment that has a physical effect on the brain. It's not just a tracker or a stimulator. And really, this is going to come down to an educational play. Um, and consumers don't want to be educated too much, right? So there's a fine line to walk there. But that really will start to come up a lot in when we're able to show customer testimonials and people start to see, wow, people are getting real results and there's actual scientific data behind this to back it up. I think that's really going to be key to the positioning.
Okay. Next question says, are the clinical trials only going to involve symptomatic patients, or will there also be studies into how the device works preventatively in asymptomatic patients?
Ed?
Well, that's a really great question. Obviously, everyone would love to treat Alzheimer's disease before you know you have it, right? And that is where some of these diagnostic companies can really make an impact, is that if they can find out 10 years before symptoms occur, you'd love to start treatment then when the damage is occurring, but your brain is able to rewire. Now, getting to the actual, so yes, that is a goal. However, right now, we're focused on treating the people that need it right now, that we can definitely get it into, and that in the course of a year study, you're going to see a dramatic change. If we move up into MCI space, which is in some cases is pre-Alzheimer's space, about 10 to 20% of those people convert into Alzheimer's each year. So right there, that means whatever trial size you're doing, you have to multiply by 10 to be able to capture those people along with the matched placebo group of that same MCI space to track those people in. If you're going to go back 10 years, I'm going to be dead by the time that trial is done. And yes, we will leave that to future generations to figure out. But if we can get good biomarkers and reliable things that enable you to say, look, you're going to get Alzheimer's when you're 65. And so when you're 55, start using this thing, and then they can measure the biomarkers coming down. The FDA has changed, at least they did, God knows now, but they had changed to where they were accepting changes in biomarkers that they felt were disease indicative. And that, for example, the antibodies that are now on the market, initially they were based on their ability to reduce amyloid beta in the brain as part of a PET scan. So if whatever assay X gets developed, and you could say, look, we cut the levels of whatever blood marker it is that seems to be important at that point in time, then maybe that would be sufficient. But you wouldn't know for 10 years if it worked or not. So in terms of a full-length trial, it's highly impractical, but I do believe diagnostics will get to the point where we can do the kind of experiment where in a year trial, we'll say, look, we reversed it.
Yeah, there's a company actually right now, it's part of the Moonshot program, that they have an agreement with a large pharmacy chain to have 1,000 locations where they will have their device, and they have FDA clearance that they can do with a 75% confidence level predict whether or not you're going to develop Alzheimer's or dementias. And one of the CEOs, the conversation I'm having with the CEO is like, yeah, one of the problems we're having is when I have this thing in 1,000 retail locations, people are going to be curious, they're going to come in and they're going to get tested, and we're going to tell them, oh, within a 75% confidence level, you will get Alzheimer's in the next 10 years, and then what? And his view is when we get that, we want to tell them, hey, try this wellness device because it would help prevent some of that upcoming onslaught of cognitive decline. But like Ed says, you can't know that. It's a longitudinal study that will take a while to get done. That's where our focus right now is diagnosed patients, mild to moderate.
Okay. And I know we're running a little bit short on time, so I'll ask a few more questions while we have about 5 more minutes. The next one is, do you imagine usage time remaining the same or decreasing in the future?
No, we think it will decrease in the future. And quite frankly, again, speculation, assumption, not verified until we have more data. We believe that you use a device twice a day for 6 to 9 months, and then you can drop to once a day, and then eventually drop it even more. Our patient that we've been tracking the longest did exactly the same pattern, now uses it once a day. So yes, we expect the usage time to decline. Now, don't ask
Okay.
me exactly by how much, because we don't have enough data yet for that.
Okay. Yiying, you have a question? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I think this technology is wonderful because I study magnetic resonance, and so I have a little knowledge about that. But my question is, can you treat this? I think this technology can be explored for more application. Can you treat this called temporal arteritis caused memory decline and vision loss? Because that is two symptom of this temporal arteritis. It appears this is significant symptom of this disease, and this disease is quite dangerous. So far, their only treatment is prednisolone. It's a kind of steroid, and somehow you have to use it like accompany your life. No stop, no stop. That medicine has a side effect. Another thing is how many megahertz you are using in your temp RF treatment. Okay, that's my question.
Sorry, what
And
disease was
that's-
it again? I missed the name of the disease.
Oh, temporal arteritis.
Arthritis.
Oh, arthritis.
Te-
Oh,
temporary arthritis, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
gosh. I mean, that does involve inflammation, but I would not hazard a guess. But you know what?
It
That's the
causes
beauty of
memory
having a
decline.
non-significant risk device that you can stick it on anything. Check it out.
Yeah, that problem causing memory decline. I was wondering,
Oh.
if, yeah, significantly.
Oh.
That here, just like Alzheimer's disease, you're gonna forget many things. And it's dangerous, that disease.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know there's, even post-surgical delirium that happens due to anesthesia. That's another sort of temporary or sometimes becomes permanent dementia that forms.
Mhm.
So again, those are other indications that, once we get some money and we have the main course of clinical trials going on with partners for Alzheimer's, that we can do small pilot studies and see what happens. For a number of other diseases, because there are over 30 different amyloid diseases that are known to exist, and probably more than we know.
As a matter of fact, one of our clinical trial requests originated from doctors watching a patient with tauopathy that significantly improved, and they're like, wait, we want to do a full trial with that. So there's a lot of areas where the misfolded proteins and the oligomers and the tau accumulate and cause all kinds of problems. But again, it's a matter of focus right now. But there's definitely a lot of opportunities for this device.
So your technology, how many megahertz the field strength?
So right now we're transmitting at 915 megahertz.
950.
And 1.6 is the specific absorption rate, and the duty, and then we're transmitting at 215 pulses per second, and then the duty cycle is 1/8 right now.
900 megahertz.
915, yes.
That is very high, seems.
Well, it needs to be, there's sort of a sweet spot, and it does appear there's a wide range that's effective, but if you get too low, you don't interact with matter very well.
Right.
And so you would not have this torquing effect. And if you get too high, you don't get good penetration because it all gets absorbed early on. So it's kind of
it's a
somewhere in between Goldilocks situation.
Okay, let me phrase the problem this way. Compare with the MRI, your frequency range is where? Are you similar to MRI frequency range?
I don't think that they are operating in that band.
Not.
But I'm not that familiar with all MRI, so I might be missing some.
It's much higher magnetic resonance frequencies. We are operating in the ISM band, which is it's like Ed said, it's kind of the middle of the road.
But if you
But that sounds more like a scientific discussion that,
we can discuss later. Okay, thank you.
yeah, I'm sure,
Yeah.
I'm sure Ed would love to hear more, and some of our other medical advisors will be interested.
Yeah, I'm from New York City College.
Okay,
City College, yeah.
thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ying. And I know we are about out of time today. I know there's a lot of people who wanted to follow up meeting with NeuroEM and further discussions, and we had so many great questions today. Maybe Chuck, if you want to put your email in the chat right now, just to make sure people have it, just at this moment, we will be sending out follow-up emails to everyone on this call today, which will include an intro to Chuck and his team, as well as the recording from today's meeting, and we'll make sure that you have all of that information. So you can stay in touch with him and schedule follow-up calls. But Chuck, Amanda, Ed, Sam, hopefully I'm not missing anyone from your team, but you guys, great job today. And like I said, we'll be connecting everyone and we will talk to everyone soon. So thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you all. Looking forward to talking to you.